Until you establish your own God is in love with me and get your identity from an all-loving God, you will never love right. One of my greatest struggles as a topic, as a man, has always revolved around the word love. But I've tried to live in love. I've tried to teach with love. I've tried to keep my motive love. But I've had a hard time teaching on it. Whenever I would go to the Word, I didn't see love the way so many of my pastoral friends saw it. Love was always presented as, who's the most loving person? Well, that would be the sweetest, cutest person that just goes, I love you, and I didn't feel that way. Love is the person that you can walk all over. Love is the person you can get them to give you your money. Love is the person you can stay at their house and take their car. So a loving person is someone that you can take advantage of, and I just couldn't see it that way. A verse that really impacted me was when Jesus said, you must love one another. And I thought, well, how? And he said, as I have loved you. So he died for us, so do I have to die? No, it's his death that gives you new life. So then I begin to study the life of Jesus in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, which are transitional books between the old covenant and the new. And if I'm supposed to love you and you're to love me the way Christ has loved, I begin to study him, and aside from his giving his life, which you cannot do what Jesus did for me. He went to hell in my place. He brings new life to me so that I can live, and he did the same for you, so we can't do that for each other. Then how did Jesus love people? So I went through the 4 books to find an example of, did anybody take advantage of Jesus? Was he just one of those little sweetie grandpas that you could steal their money, their car, their house, get them to... No, nobody took advantage of Jesus. But they killed him. No, they didn't kill him. John 10 says, Jesus says, and it was like he was speaking to me when he said, nobody takes my life. I give it. And they tried to take his life, and he walked through the crowd, and they couldn't find him. They couldn't even decide when they took his life. He gave it, and he gave it freely of his own. He loved on his time. He loved his way, and he followed love. And I thought, well, how do you follow love? You follow God. Now I was getting somewhere. So I don't have to be this patsy that everybody can take advantage of. I don't have to walk around and I love you and I love you. God bless you. And I get little tingles and my leg pops when I see you, and all this lovey-dovey stuff that, you know, some of the women might like, but I did a leadership conference in the States, and I don't know how they heard about it, but I had, I think 12 to 14 Navy SEALs show up. Took in the conference and then asked if they could take me out to lunch afterwards. And I sat around a table with young men trained to the elite. The elite. And as we talked about their marriages and the future and their nation and why they became Navy SEALs, I met men that loved, but they weren't cute. I met men who would lay down their lives in a second, and you could not disagree, they loved. Everybody looks at Christians and goes, well, you're supposed to love. What they mean is do what I want. God is love. Love has wisdom because wisdom cries aloud in the streets, it says in Proverbs. And so to love someone without wisdom doesn't make sense. Doesn't loving someone, shouldn't it look ahead into the future? Shouldn't it, if you're going to love your kids, then do you give them whatever they want? No. My daughters, they get upset at me, and Sally's going, Leon, because they walk up to me with these big eyes, and I'm having a latte, and so I give them a sip of my latte. Dad, what are you doing? You can't give the kid caffeine. Oh, yeah, right, but I can't say no. And then, if I grab a couple chocolates, and this little 2-year-old waddles over to my chair with these big eyes, and I'm going, there's no one looking. I start feeding them chocolates. And they're going, Dad, I'm going to leave that kid at your place. They're going to be up all night. You can't just give people what they want. And it's hard. Your grandparents know what I'm talking about. And so I think, okay, so I have to love them, but I got to use wisdom when I love them. And piece by piece, I begin to recognize that love is the most powerful force in the universe. That love is God, and God is so potent. He's so powerful. He's so all-knowing. He's so incredible. And He knows, and He tells us, live for the generations, live for the future, make decisions for the future. Don't just walk around going, we're Christians, we just love you and do whatever you want to our system, to me, to my... No, we build with love. You can be a businessman that builds companies in a city. And if your motive is love, it'll outlive you and bring blessing in jobs and careers and finances. And that city can be strong and healthy. You give back. Some can educate and get into education and with a motive of love. And I want to love. And I want to educate. And then there's others that it's not love, they just take. So I want to give you quickly today something that'll change your life, and it's helping me on this journey of what is love. I want to talk to you about the 3 quadrants of love. God is love. And He created you in love. You are a child of love. One person said to me, my mom was raped and she didn't have an abortion, and I'm not a child of love. I said, I don't care how you were conceived. God knew the future. He saw the pain, the brokenness, and the heartache. And He created the human race for the purpose of loving. You can't get more intimate than the word family. And when He made the world, He called it good. When He made the universe, it's good. He made animals, it's good. We love animals. But when He made people, He said, let's make them like us. That's what God said. Let's make them in our image, in our likeness. I grew up listening to some pastors that, you dirty, rotten, good-for-nothing sinner, you ought to be glad God even looks at you, you pathetic piece of humanity. Literally, worse words than I'm using right now. And I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to make me understand how much God is looking at. And I'm going, whoa, that's how I feel about myself now. I'm just this piece of sinful, never perfect, never get it right, never do enough person that hopefully God looks at me. And then as I begin to read the Bible for myself, of which I've been doing the last 40 years, I found out that I'm made in His likeness and in His image. So to call myself down is to call Him down. I recognize that He's a God of love, and He made me in love, that I come from a God whose heart is so full of love, and He made you, and He loves you, and you are beautifully and wonderfully made, it says in Psalms 139, and that you cannot get your significance, you cannot get your dignity, you cannot get your value from anyone, not your wife, not your husband, not your government, not your church, not your pastor, not your kids. You can only get it from a God that loves you so completely, it stabilizes your identity. The first quadrant of love is to recognize that your identity, who you are, has to come from an all-knowing, all-loving God who looks at you and He sees Jesus. He sees the very creation. And until you anchor that and you receive this love and you begin to believe this love and stop looking at yourself through the eyes of others, you look through the eyes of God who created you. Now you establish this powerful, rock-solid identity. I look like God. I'm his kid. He made me, designed me. I'm wonderfully made. God, you love me. You're in love with me. You're pleased with me. You're excited about me. There's no worse torture to a child than to have them look at the person that loves them the most, like a dad or a mom, for example, or maybe they were raised by a grandpa, a grandma, a foster mom, that's fine. But to look at the person that they should get the most love from and to get disdain, you displease me, you're not good enough, is probably one of the most destructive forces that we could ever unleash on the next generation. And so to love that generation and to help them establish their values, powerful, but until you establish your own, God is in love with me, and get your identity from an all-loving God, you will never love right. You'll never get your emotions right. You'll never keep healthy emotions. It'll be wah, 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 wah. First quadrant. Receive God's love. Believe God's love. Now I've got news for you. I'm working on the believing part. Because I know me so good, I'm shocked people love me. So are you. You know how selfish and self-centered we can be as we look at ourselves and translate everything by ourselves, through ourselves. And you know, it's an amazing day when someone looks at you and says, you know, I know you think everyone's talking about you, but it's even worse than that. They don't even think about you. But that's freeing. But every one of us thinks if people are whispering, they're talking about me. And so you must. Now, man, I could unpack this for hours. It's the most beautiful, amazing teaching. God is love. You were made in love, designed for love, loved by a God. Second quadrant of love is yourself. You must love yourself. Now, we've been taught in our nation, we have a saying, oh, he loves himself. And so we mean you're arrogant. We mean you're self-centered. You think about yourself. But a stunning verse in the Bible says that we must love others as we love God. No, as we love our mother. No, as we love our father. No, as we love ourselves. Loving yourself is an absolute key to the ability to keep your relationships healthy and whole. If you do not love yourself, you have no ability to really love others. Now, you'll try. But the second quadrant of love, the second key to living this life at peace and at joy, the second key to the most beautiful mind. You know, they did a movie years ago called A Beautiful Mind. If you want a beautiful mind, beautiful emotions, beautiful relationships, if you want a life that puts you at peace, disconnected from anybody's ability to control your emotions, control your identity, to control who you are, etc., then you must learn to love yourself. And if you do not learn to love yourself, you will feel phony, even though this is you. So who are you? Well, my name, that's your name. Who are you? Well, I'm an electrician. No, that's what your career is. Who are you? You are who God says you are. You're not who anybody else says you are. You're not who your failures say you are. You're not who your successes say you are. You are who the God of love, who created you, says you are, and you are so loved.